What's up, comic book fans? Anchorpete here, and I am super excited to talk about The Batman, the 2022 Batman film that just came out this weekend. I'm, of course, with my good friend Brian over there. Brian, how you doing tonight?
Doing great. Looking forward to this nice little bonus episode we got here.
Hell yeah. We are Comic Books Transformed. We talk about all the great adaptations of comic books, whether they're adapted into TV shows like Doom Patrol that we're covering on our channel right now, or animated shows like Young Justice. We are big DC guys, and nothing's more exciting than a new Batman movie. Yes. So right off the bat, Brian, do you know the year that the first Batman comic ever came out?
Oh my God. It's 1941?
It's even earlier than that. It's 1939.
39. Okay.
So Batman has come out, and he's been around for 83 years at this point.
Wow.
And it's kind of insane to think about all the different adaptations. Would you say that there are tens of thousands of licensed Batman stories, or hundreds of thousands of Batman stories?
I guess tens of thousands.
Tens of thousands? Yeah. Because that's kind of the point I wanted to make tonight. Was I feel like this movie in general, and I want to see what you think about this. There's so much of Batman that exists, right? Because he's 83 years he's been around, and there's multiple movies. There's reboots of multiple movies. So many different versions of Batman. I felt like this movie, in general, chose to focus on aspects that we haven't seen in live-action movies so far.
I don't want to say haven't seen completely, but it's definitely things that they expanded a lot more on things they didn't previously focus on as much.
Yeah.
I think there was a little bit of what was in this movie in the Nolan movies,
yes,
but a lot more of it.
Yes. So right now, Brian and I are going to talk non-spoilers, and we're going to kind of dig into that a little bit. Then we're going to go full spoilers. But let's just kind of talk about the reaction that people have been having so far, because I think that kind of influences what I'm going to say tonight too. A lot of people have been saying that this is like a detective noir story, more than like a superhero story. And a lot of people are saying that this is the most comics accurate Batman movie so far. How do you feel about those two statements?
Yeah, I agree with those statements. Yes. I think this, my first initial reaction to this was the most long Halloween feeling movie they've done yet.
Yes.
And yeah, it's definitely more detective focused, noir focused, and not as much of a fantastical superhero movie that we've seen that we're so used to with Marvel, and even more recent DC movies.
Yeah, very good point. You said it's the most accurate long Halloween, or the most similar.
Well, it's not a direct translation of the long Halloween, but I felt just the tone and the feel of it was the closest they've come to replicating the long Halloween, I think.
Yes, that's real interesting that you say that, because when I saw The Dark Knight in 2008, I was like, oh, that is a lot like the long Halloween. I felt like they took a lot of that, especially all the Harvey stuff with Two-Face.
Yeah.
But then there is an actual adaptation of the long Halloween. There's an animated version of it too. But there's something about that story, I think, that really resonates with filmmakers. And Matt Reeves, I know that they've interviewed him, and it seems like he's very dedicated to making it kind of comics accurate.
Yeah.
I to me, in the very opening sequence where you have a narration by Bruce Wayne, which has never been done in any of the live action movies, and you see Gotham, I was like, whoa, that's straight out of the comics right there. That's super on the nose, But
do we know what city this was filmed in?
I don't know, man. But whatever they did, oh, go ahead.
I know the Nolan movies were really filmed in Chicago. I mean, and there were times I really thought this was New York, but there were other times that I did not think it was New York, because especially any bridge shot was nope, that's not New York.
right. And there's definitely a major location that's like Madison Square Garden,
Yeah, that very much looks like Madison Square Garden. Yes.
Yeah. So what I was gonna say though, as far as how I feel about those two statements, it being like a noir movie and also being very accurate. I felt like it's very accurate to the comics in the sense that almost all of the time you see Robert Pattinson, he is Batman. He's like wearing the bat suit, or he's like half out of the bat suit with the mascara on his eyes. There's only like maybe 1 or 2 scenes where he's just pretending to be Bruce Wayne. Whereas like every other live action version of Batman, they kind of shoehorn a Bruce Wayne thing, whether it's like a romance or something. Even the Christian Bale ones, there's like Bruce Wayne stuff. Even the Ben Affleck Batman, there's Bruce Wayne stuff, you know?
Yeah.
So,
there was a lot less Bruce Wayne in this movie. And one of the things I felt too is that there wasn't as much of a mask as Bruce Wayne. Like I feel like his Bruce was not all that different from his Batman.
Yeah.
And usually that's something they play up. They play up that Bruce is a very, very, very different. Like a little more upbeat. No, I don't want to say upbeat. That's the bad word. A little more sociable, or just normal, quote unquote, or something. I mean,
with Bruce, the way that they portray him in the any kind of live action, it's usually like he's kind of like a flake, kind of like he's sort of like this like playboy who's a little like naive seeming or kind of dumb seeming, and then it's like this great contrast to Batman. And all the different versions of Bruce Wayne, we've seen that in the live action versions where they like play that up, you know. In this, it's like he's just super, super focused to the point where he doesn't care if the Wayne legacy goes away, right?
Yeah.
And I thought Robert Pattinson did a great job. I think the thing that was kind of jarring to me is the costume itself. Like, I feel like if his costume was like a little bit different, I'd be even more into this. And I also want to just get across the point that I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. I have some issues with this movie, but it is a lot better than many Batman movies. It's not my favorite.
Totally agree with that. I kind of did like the costume. It grew on me as it went on. I think when we first saw it, it looked, and they were talking about how this was a Batman early in his career, and he doesn't have as many of the fancy gadgets and all this. And I think it looked a little more maybe realistic.
Yeah.
Like it looked like body armor and sort of, but not like really thick body armor. I don't know. But I did, the costume really did grow on me as the movie went on.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, this movie is like super, super realistic. It's even more realistic than the Christopher Nolan movies. And those movies, they like purposely made it as realistic as possible. This is like, a lot of times he's just like sneaking into places at ground level. He's like running on the ground. Almost in every version of Batman, I think even the Christian Bale Batman, he's always like swooping down and picking people up, or like swooping down and attacking people, busting through skylights. I think he does that like once in this movie. Otherwise, he's like on ground level most of the time. And like things like the Batmobile, like those are always romanticized and so like, you know, blown up. The Batmobile is very practical. Like I think personally, just go back to that Detective Noire point. Like you could get rid of his costume and just have him be like a private investigator who's like aggressive, and this would still work as a movie.
Yes, I agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I went to go see it last night with my wife, and my wife does not like superhero movies at all. And she likes Batman though. But she actually liked this movie, and she thought that she actually liked it more than me. And I think it's because of that whole detective angle, you know?
Yeah, no, it was a mystery, and I mean, it did keep me guessing throughout the movie. More so about like where the ending was. Like, you know, I do feel it did run rather long. It does feel like it needs it, but like I don't feel like there's anything that could have been cut out necessarily. Like, well, I don't think there's anything super obvious that could have been cut out. Like a huge chunk.
We might differ on that point.
Okay. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Well, do you want to go into spoilers so that way we can talk about all that kind of shit?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so we're gonna go into spoilers. And before we talk about the ending, because the ending is the part that I think you could cut out. I just kind of wanted to talk about like what I liked and then what I had some issues with. So, but before I start rambling and shit, what do you want to tell me? Something that you really liked about this movie? You could spoil the shit out of it at this point.
We kind of, I kind of already said, I liked the performances of just about everybody.
Okay.
I thought that there were some very comic, I don't want to say the comic accurate performances. Yeah, I thought the cast was great. I thought the acting was great. Everyone did fairly well. Maybe one or two exceptions.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't know what to say spoilery that about what I liked at this point.
Okay, yeah. So in general, you just liked it, especially you liked the cast.
Yeah, I liked it a lot. I liked the whole thing a lot. I thought the music was excellent.
Oh yes, oh yes.
It felt like so ingrained in the movie, so much more than anything before. It really set like a pacing and a tone to the scenes.
Yes.
And I mean, like I don't know if I you know how sometimes there's like a soundtrack to a movie and like you would actually like listen to it.
Yes.
And you know it picks out like something stands out about like a particular track or theme or something like that. I don't know if I'd listen to this on its own, but it added so much to the movie that it's not even funny.
Yes. I feel like that's one exception that the Batman movies have from many of the franchises that have been around for decades. Is that it has like there's always major themes, whether it's the Danny Elfman Batman music from the 1989 and Batman Returns, or it's like the music from Batman Forever and Batman and Robin. The Christian Bale Batman movies, the Christopher Nolan movies, those have very distinct themes in them too. And then this. And what I thought was so interesting was the Batman music is molded around that Nirvana song. That's Something in the Way.
Yeah.
You know? And then the Riddler theme, I think, is like kind of molded around Ave Maria.
Yes, you heard Ave Maria a lot in this movie.
Yeah. And a lot of times it's with a choir singing it too. So the music is fantastic, and I think it's really well done. And just like that opening fucking sequence where like he has the narration and he's talking about like being in the shadows or being the shadows. That might be my favorite part of the whole movie. Is like the criminals look up and they see the bat signal, then they look in the shadows and they're scared. That is like the most fucking Batman thing I think I've ever seen. You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So let's kind of talk about like stuff that we really like then. Like I really liked his interaction with Catwoman. That's one of the things that stood out. In particular, I like that sequence when Catwoman has to go into the Iceberg Lounge and she has those contact lenses like he does.
Yes.
That's a great sequence where she's walking around and like he's talking about facial recognition. Like that feels like it's right out of the comics. And it's like setting up their relationship. I just thought that was really great, you know?
Yeah, I feel like the relationship for the two of them, this was very much lifted right out of year one.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that. I thought Zoe Kravitz was excellent.
Yeah.
I think the only thing I've seen her in was X-Men First Class, and I did not think she was good in that. So this was like a complete 180 for me on her.
Right.
So she looked the part, she acted the part, and she fit well into the movie. I think is a more of an accessory, I suppose, you know, to the whole story.
Yeah. Well, that's the crazy thing about this movie. It's kind of like going along with what I was saying before. Is I feel like they play up other aspects of Batman than like what they've focused on more in other adaptations. And there's been so many versions of Catwoman now at this point too. You have the Michelle Pfeiffer version, the Anne Hathaway version, and this version, which is very much like that year one, kind of like that living in a rundown apartment. You know, maybe she's connected to prostitution, maybe not. Kind of Catwoman with the short hair. I think you got it spot on there. And then, you know, she's got that friend that she's connected to. I really like that it was like, find out what happened to her friend. And like Catwoman's like the femme fatale that's working with him. I really love that whole aspect of this movie.
I really like the kind of the one of the best things about Batman is the supporting cast in general in the comics. There's so many characters and people, and they really did cram a lot of them in there.
Oh yes,
this movie, and they did all of them well. And it's maybe I interrupted my own thought, but by thinking about my one kind of like bad point. Carmine Falcone. I don't think that John Turturro was the right person to play Carmine Falcone. He actually took me out a little bit.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know why. I mean, I guess I'm so used to. I'm mainly used to seeing him as the goofball idiot guy from Transformers.
Okay.
So
So
it's like I can't take him seriously. I can't.
yes, Simmons from
Simmons, yeah.
from Transformers.
And I couldn't. I just it took me out of the movie a little bit, honestly.
Yeah, did you think that like when he came out of the club at the end that Bumblebee was going to open up his little flap and pee on him with some motor?
Yeah,
oil?
I did. I thought that's what bringing him to light was meant to be.
Yes, the shared universe. I was waiting for that shit too. Yeah, no. Okay, I got stuff to say about Carmine Falcone too. What's interesting about that character in general, right, is we've seen Carmine Falcone in the Nolan movies, right?
Yes.
To where I can't remember the actor's name, but it's because they have Falcone in Batman Begins, and then there's Maroni, who is Eric Roberts in The Dark Knight, right?
Yes.
And they kind of flipped it to where Maroni kind of took the fall for that big drug bust that they refer to all the time, and then Falcone is kind of like in the shadows, whereas Falcone was like the big guy in Batman Begins. So they kind of flipped it. Because it was like Maroni was like Falcone's lieutenant or whatever. But
yeah, and it's Tom Wilkinson that was was Falcone in
Batman
the Nolan
Begins.
movies.
Thank you. Yeah. But that part is like, because you mentioned Batman Year One, the mafia crime boss stuff is like such a big part of Batman Year One, and they really play that up in Batman Begins, where like it's like you always start off with the mafia, the regular kind of street crime stuff. And then you kind of start to play into the crazies with the costumes that come next because of Batman. And yes. They do that in this one too. But I think that some people, I wonder, because all the stuff that's like the background stuff, and this is what I want to talk to you about specifically, all the background stuff of the idea that like Catwoman is Falcone's daughter, that the Wayne family is connected to the Arkham family, all that kind of background shit, that's straight out of the comics.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I feel like there's so much set up for other major comic storylines in this, even alternate universe stuff too. But just the fact that Martha Wayne is an Arkham, and she's had her battles with mental health. They're just the general corruption of the city and the whole thing behind that renewal project felt very Court of Owls to me.
Yes.
I feel like we could definitely see that. And then there's more minor little nods. Like I feel like the end of the movie kind of feels like No Man's Land.
It feels like No Man's Land, and it also feels like Year Zero too.
Yes. Yeah. I was thinking of Year Zero too because Riddler's very prominent. Well, he's the main villain in that.
Right.
Yeah, maybe Year Zero is more appropriate there.
I'm sorry, I interrupt you. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
And then I was going to say that there was that brief little moment towards the end where Batman uses that green liquid, which I'm interpreting as venom.
Yes. Okay.
There was venom before Bane,
Yep.
So that could be something that comes, soon too.
It's so much to unpack with what you just said, right? Because like with the Year Zero thing, for instance, right? The Riddler literally does what he does in this movie, where he blows up the seawall and Gotham floods. Like he literally does that in Year Zero. So that's like taken straight out of it. And then like this kind of flooded Gotham, which you see, spoilers at the end of this movie, that's like Year Zero right there, and even the way that Batman acts, because it is like this sort of like second year Batman story. It's like, obviously Matt Reeves is definitely influenced by the Scott Snyder Batman, right?
Yes.
And what do you call it? So you have that Year Zero stuff. Then with Carmine Falcone and like the idea that like Catwoman is his daughter, they play that up in the comics. Like the way that she scratches his face at the end, that actually does literally happen in the comics, where like she scratches Falcone's face. I mean, that's one thing I was kind of wondering about was, did they maybe put too many stories into this to where it's like too much, and like maybe just take out a little bit? Go ahead.
There is a lot there, but I feel like they feel like more Easter eggy and their potential leads to they feel more like a foundation than was like tacked on things, I think. And I think it worked. because I feel like they could take this in many different directions moving forward. I mean, I'm hoping we're getting sequels to this.
Yeah.
And it didn't feel gratuitous to me.
Okay.
All the nods they added in.
I 1000% agree with you on that. It's not like anything was just like, oh, we're gonna name drop this person. There's no shit like that in this movie whatsoever. Like,
it's like, oh, here's the T-Rex that Batman's gonna have in his cave one day.
Right.
Yeah,
and his cave was even awesome too. But yeah. Right. There's no little like nods. I mean, there's a couple of things where it kind of feels like, okay, they just popped it in, especially at the end. But I guess my main thing that I had an issue with was that very last like 30 minutes of the movie. Because I personally felt like you could have that showdown with Catwoman and Carmine Falcone. They take Batman takes him out, and then the Riddler kills him. But then I wanted Batman to just catch the Riddler, and that's the end of the movie. That whole sequence where like he floods Gotham, and then they're in like Madison Square Garden with the Riddlers. Like Danny even said it. He kind of felt like that was this like added action sequence, you know?
Well, you know what? Yes, it did, because I there really aren't that many action sequences in this movie. I don't think.
No.
If they would have ended with the Falcone stuff, and I guess they would have had something else with the Riddler,
right?
Because the Riddler was not captured by then.
Right.
It does feel excessive, but I think it would have felt lacking. I think there needed to be a bigger resolution.
Yeah.
Than anything they could have just catching the Riddler could have done. Like, it wouldn't have felt like it was enough closure in the movie, I don't think.
Yes. And see, I kind of already pictured you and I having this conversation and you saying that. Because pretty much in every version of a Batman movie, every live action Batman movie, Gotham City itself is at stake, right? Like, there's always this like the whole city's going to be destroyed kind of thing. Every version of Batman. And so, like, if they had just got Falcone, yeah, there's the idea of like the police are completely corrupt, the whole system is corrupt, but it's not that sort of like doomsday for Gotham scenario. And there's two other points I wanted to ask you about too, because this kind of ties into what I'm going to say. Two other points that people keep saying is this: that one of the main ideas in the movie is that it's Batman as like a vigilante, but not the greatest detective, and he messes up. And so therefore, he learns to become the greatest detective. That's one thing that people say. And the other one is that he's like this like kind of brooding vigilante, and it's like him becoming a hero. And do you agree with those points or no?
I see it more as this is an early Batman who knows he wants to do something, but he doesn't know the best way to do it yet, and he's still learning. So he's growing his skill set, and he finds, I think by the end of the movie, he finds his direction of how he wants to move forward as the Batman.
Yes. And see, that's what kind of justifies that end sequence for me, even though I do like tension-wise and stuff, I don't feel that tension the way that I do in other Batman movies. Like,
yeah, it does lack a little tension because they're essentially villains that came out of nowhere. And there's no face to them because the Riddler's already caught. It is a little jarring in that sense, but like I said, that when he realizes and finds that purpose at the end of it, that's what sold me on that extra 30 minutes towards the end.
Right. Because there's a couple of like tie-ins that they do. Like, one thing is the main guy that shoots him, that's going to shoot him right in the face. No, it's not that guy. It is that guy because
it's the guy he runs into at the funeral for the mayor.
Is it that guy, or was it? I thought it was the guy in the beginning that was a Joker, and then he beat the shit out of.
No, he doesn't show up again, I don't think.
Okay.
No, this was the guy that he talks to as Bruce Wayne, at the funeral for the mayor. When he's kind of like on the sidelines. Because the guy stood out because they had a back and forth for a couple lines. I'm like, this has got to come back later because there's no way that this is nothing.
Okay. I did think it could have maybe been that guy too. The only reason why I thought it was that Joker guy is because he says, "I'm vengeance," after he like pummels that guy. And one of the things throughout the whole movie was that like Catwoman calls him vengeance a bunch of times. Even the Penguin calls him vengeance. And I'm like, how do they know that he calls himself vengeance? in that scene. And I'm guessing that like one of those Jokers might have like talked to a reporter and said that, that he said on vengeance.
It's possible. I like the idea of that. That kid said that, but I feel like that scene was more to kind of show somebody being scared straight by Batman, because that guy was clearly like a neophyte. He was definitely newer. He was being inducted into that with the half face and all that.
Yeah.
And then I think him seeing Batman scared him straight, probably. And I could imagine that character being like fringe lunatic Riddler follower kind of thing,
Oh, no. I didn't. The one with the half face, I'm not saying he was the Riddler guy. I'm saying that the guy that like Batman beat to a pulp, that was a Joker. You know what I'm saying?
The guy at the end.
Yeah, in the very beginning sequence where you have the Joker guys, there's the one guy that goes up to him who's all cocky, and then Batman just like messes him.
Okay, in the beginning. Yeah. No, I'm fairly confident it's the guy from the funeral.
Okay. Well, I got to see this movie multiple times so I can like kind of notice all these things too. But yeah, so there's that where it's like he remembers that line. At the very least, he remembers that line, and I guess he remembers that conversation with that guy at the funeral. And it kind of triggers something in him. And then there's also the sequence where there's the boy who's the mayor's son, and he has a connection with the mayor's son because they lost at least one family member, and he saves him from that wreckage. And then, of course, there's that woman that like he puts on that stretcher at the very end, and like he looks up to the sky. So it's that kind of, it's like symbolizing him becoming a hero versus this sort of like bloodthirsty vigilante, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially after he has that dark moment where he does pop that drug, and then he does beat that guy's face in.
Okay. So that was another point too. Some people are like, that's just adrenaline. Why would people think it's venom? And it's like, it's venom because it's green. Yeah. It's venom because like it's been in the Batman comics. It could be adrenaline because adrenaline is green too. But like, don't you think that that's just kind of setting up the idea of like there being a Bane?
Yeah. Yes. And Batman had an addiction to venom before Bane existed.
Yes.
So, and that, I don't think that's as common knowledge to people, but it clearly has to be that.
Yeah.
He got real rage in it, and you saw the look on Gordon's face as he rushes up and sees him doing that. Was Catwoman there too, or
somebody else was there too?
Yeah, they both there. And they're like, "Whoa, what the?"
Yeah. But like that sequence, and I think that's why I talk about this so much, because I have a lot of issues with that sequence. It almost feels like there's a climax like 3 times, right? Because he gets like shot when he's trying to save everybody, and Catwoman comes over and kisses him, and it's almost like she's saying, "It's okay, you can die." And I actually, for a moment there, was like, "Wait a minute, are they going to kill Batman? Is this going to be like spoilers?" Wait, I don't want to spoil this for you. There's another movie where like a famous character died recently, but I was like, oh, that'd be real cool if like they actually killed Batman in this. Yeah. But then he gets up and then he falls in the water after he cuts that cord. And I was like, oh, that made it look like he died. But then like a second later, he came up out of the water,
Yeah. It did feel like there were several attempts at climaxes in the movie. And but I think the one that they landed on works the best.
Mm-hmm. What did you think of that interaction between the Riddler and Batman at the very end?
I liked it a lot because that was the most they've ever shown. There's always the question of what came first, Batman or Batman's villains, or who, chicken or the egg. And that was probably the best scene with the Riddler, honestly, when he's talking about like, oh, I thought we were in this together. I thought we were doing this together. I'm here because of you, and all this. And I really liked that, and it was a fairly different take on the Riddler, I think.
Yes.
He was a little more manic and crazy. I can't quite put my finger on what villain he felt more like to me. Mm-hmm. But usually the Riddler's a lot more composed, I think. He definitely gets unhinged at times, but I think for the most part he's more together and less crazy conspiracy theorist kind of fringe guy.
Yeah, the Riddler, I would say the standout quality of the Riddler, excluding Jim Carrey's interpretation of the Riddler, but almost every other interpretation of the Riddler is that he's extremely arrogant and that he always feels like he's smarter than everybody else, and that he needs to do these puzzles for, because he wants a challenge, or he wants someone to solve the problems so that like they can be a challenge to him, and that's what Batman is to him. This Riddler is like he's trying to have everyone, like he's trying to tell a message, essentially, like he's trying to expose Gotham's dark secrets, and I really, really like that. I like the way he looked. I liked the videos with him and his like victims. I liked that sequence where Peter Sarsgaard has that like bomb around his neck in the church, and he's on the phone. So fucking tense, so good. What I was gonna say was that with Batman movies, everyone sees fucking Batman movies. They're like billion-dollar franchise movies, and so when you put certain things in them, they become mirrors to other Batman movies. And so Batman in a cell or like an interrogation room with a criminal, all of a sudden your mind goes to the Dark Knight, right?
Yeah.
And that's what that scene was like. It was like, well, Batman's got control, the guy's arrested, but no. There's something bad happening. It was like that sequence, and it didn't fall flat. It was able to hold its own with that iconic Heath Ledger Joker Batman interrogation scene.
Totally agree.
Yeah. So, I mean, the Riddler, it felt like they just kind of threw on like, oh, he has this whole following, and they're all good. Like that seemed like it was like this added on thing, and I didn't like that, but I am willing to take it. I will say
they very subtly hinted at it throughout the movie. There were nods to it. It's not like they pulled out of nowhere, but it does seem odd that you didn't really see them before. But I guess they needed to do that to preserve the surprise of it at the end. Like, oh, you thought I was done? I'm not.
Yes, yeah.
And I think too that as we get older and consume more of these movies with these big crazy plot twists and all this, it gets harder and harder to surprise people. And I think they have to keep going further and further and further and layer upon layer upon layer to order to evoke the same kind of thing that they would have done. That would have been much simpler, like a single layered twist, decades ago. And now they have to do, 3 layers, 4 layers, and just to evoke the same reaction.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. Going off that point, do you think that a person could watch this movie if it's their very first Batman movie? If they have like sort of, general knowledge of Batman and they see this movie, they don't see the Keaton movie, they don't see the Christian Bale movie, can they thoroughly enjoy this?
Man, I'm thinking this from 2 angles. Like saying like a younger, like a teenager seeing his first Batman movie or something like that.
Right.
And I'm also actually thinking of my mom who saw this movie.
Okay.
Like someone she works with like rented out a theater for like the staff to see the movie, which I'm like, that is so cool.
That is awesome.
And she texted me after like, when did Batman get so dark?
Yeah, right.
And I think she said she saw Batman Begins, but she hadn't seen any of the other Nolan movies, and I don't think she saw. She must have seen all the 90s ones, because I saw all the 90s ones.
Right.
So I'm thinking about it in terms of someone who's like lapsed and is used to something that's not so much like it's real dark. It's a real dark serial killery kind of vibe movie. And then someone coming into it, like it has no exposure to Batman. Could they enjoy it? I guess. I think you get more enjoyment out of it if you know things and you know the character and you've been reading the comics and you've always wanted to see more of a detective story.
Yes.
Because that's like the prime characteristic of Batman is just like he's the world's greatest detective.
Yes. Well, you talked about your mom's experience. I'll talk about my wife's experience. My wife reads Batman books to my daughter, because we have some little small kid Batman books in our library. And, it always says like the world's greatest detective. And she's like, he's not really a detective in the other movies. They always kind of like subtly hint at him being a detective, and he does a little bit of investigating, but it's barely any detective work in the other live action movies. And then she felt like this movie was like heavily influenced by Seven, and I agree with that.
Yeah, I agree.
And a lot of people have made that comparison too. So unless you have other things to talk about this movie specifically, I was thinking we could talk about the other Batman movies in relation to this.
I actually, we didn't touch upon the Penguin at all.
Oh, okay.
And I would say how good Colin Farrell was. How my wife didn't even realize that was Colin Farrell.
Right.
And I think how perfectly that sets him up for that kind of more modern take on the Penguin, where he's still kind of a criminal underworld, but he's kind of like, a little more ambivalent to with Batman, and he will help on occasion, or if he's threatened or something like that. I really like that setup for him in this movie a lot.
Yeah, Colin Farrell is like pretty much like unrecognizable in that makeup. It's like ridiculous. It was like a completely different person. They have had that kind of version of the Penguin where he is connected to Falcone, or he's like, like an underboss or whatever.
Yeah.
And they really kind of play up this almost like this kind of mafia gangster kind of version of the Penguin, which is so very different from the Danny DeVito version. That's what's so great about this. And this is what the point I keep trying to like just get out is like, there's so many different versions of each of these characters that we've all seen. Like everyone has seen all these different versions. So it's interesting, like which versions they decide to go with. And I think that there's supposed to be like a live action Penguin show on HBO Max. Have you heard about that?
No, I heard about an Arkham show.
Yeah.
But I didn't hear about a Penguin show. That should be very interesting.
Yeah. I heard that there's supposed to be a live action Penguin show that spins off of this. And then there's supposed to be at least 2 other movies too.
I wonder what that could be about.
I know. And you know what, like, because like, I'm a little bit more pressed for time today, but like maybe after we finish our Doom Patrol, if there's like points that we didn't think about, we could always talk about too some more.
Of course.
But I mean, because honestly, I've just been thinking about this movie fucking nonstop since I saw it last night.
Same here. One last quick thing. What is your opinion on Jeffrey Wright's Jim Gordon?
Okay, great question. I really, really liked that they made it almost like a buddy cop with like Batman and Gordon. I really like that because that's once again, it's like so unlike what you've seen before. Like with the Gary Oldman Gordon, he's very much involved and he's like a lot more present than the other versions of Gordon. But I thought he did a great job. Look, we got a Derpy too over here joining us over here. Derpy said, "I enjoyed this film. He was a great Gordon." Thank you, Derpy. What did you think of him, Brian?
I liked the portrayal a lot. I did like the buddy cop aspect of it, sort of. But I thought he was a little too much background. Like there wasn't enough. He wasn't as involved as plot wise, I think, as Gary Oldman was. I think. He felt more a part of the story than he does. He feels more like an accessory.
Yes,
in this movie.
So you bring up a good point to go along with what I was saying, because like I feel like he's more in the movie than Gary Oldman is, but Gary Oldman in the Nolan movies, it's like he has his own arc, and each movie he has his own arc too. In this, he's just kind of like the support for Batman.
Yes.
Yeah. That's a good point, man. And maybe like one last thing I kind of want to bring up too is I like each of the individual kills that the Riddler does, and like even the scenes where they have video of him, that's just like Heath Ledger's Joker the few times that he's videotaped. But yeah, that church sequence, that's like really the only time you see Bruce Wayne in public. And when you see him, he's so like aloof. It's like he doesn't even know how to fucking talk to people.
Yeah.
And then I love that sequence so much. I love that like they have Peter Sarsgaard, who I think is a sort of this underrated great actor. He's got this almost like saw-like device to his neck, and he's got the phone. And then I love when Batman just walks in out of the shadows, and it like I feel like that's setting up Batman the hero. He really did try to save him, and it was just like so intense. I just love all the
just the fact that timer ticked down, and he did not back away at all.
Yeah, he just took a fucking bomb blast just to the face.
Yeah, and you know what? Real quick, I had to bring that up too. I do think that he took like a few too many bullets, like straight on and just completely unfazed. Maybe that was a little bit too much.
Oh yeah, and you even said that in the trailer too. You're like, it's weird to just see him like walk right into machine guns.
Yeah, you know what? Every scene where that happens, they show in that trailer.
Yeah, right. Yeah. It's just weird because like no one ever shoots him right here, right? But they shoot everywhere else.
He does take a lot of punishment. You do see a lot of scars on his body, and I distinctly remember too that scene where he turns the cape into the flight suit, which I felt was probably the most realistic thing they've ever done with that, because you're not really gonna glide with the cape or anything like that.
right.
But like it kind of worked, and then when he popped the parachute and it gets clipped and he just fucking tumbles and he gets like that looked painful.
Yes, it really did. Yeah, he takes a lot of abuse in this movie. Yeah. But I mean, it's like you said, they show it. It's hard, man. But he's dedicated. I don't know. I'm super excited. I actually would love to see if they would have like a Robin in the next one too. I think that would work with this version of Batman.
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Robert Pattinson has said he's agreed to have a Robin, but Robin has to be 12 years old or 13 years old.
I mean, do you think the mayor's son is going to be Robin?
I did think that.
I got so many vibes of that too, like that whole time. But I mean, he's a little too young, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also like the now that we know Maroni's out of the picture too, like he was always very tied into Dick Grayson, and his art. Well, at least in the animated series, he was.
In the animated series, yeah.
No,
and even the animated series,
Robin Year One, he was too, I think.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. Oh my God, so many different versions of Batman, so many good versions of Batman. It's ridiculous. Yeah. So, and then I was going to ask you one other question before we transition. Do you think that if there's like a top 10 recognizable figures of humanity, to where like humanity alive right now could notice people and characters, like, is Batman in the top 10?
Yes.
That's what I think. And I'm talking like Jesus and like Donald Trump, like all these people where like everyone knows who they are, right?
Yeah.
Batman is like in the top 10, right?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought.
I mean, and just the if you would just ask some random person on the street, like, what's Batman's real name? I bet most people would get it.
Yes, yes. Could you imagine showing anybody from like 2 years old to 80 years old a picture of Batman and being like, who's this? Is there anybody that would be like, I don't know who that is?
Yeah.
Right? That's what I thought. Okay. He's just literally, there. You can make money. Just put him on a screen and it makes money.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. Speaking of which, we got just a little bit of time here to cram in our ranking of all the live action versions of Batman. Now, I have a couple of stipulations here. It's live action, so we're ruling out Mask of the Phantasm and any other animated movie. We're also ruling out a movie where Batman is not like in the title or one of the core characters. So that rules out Suicide Squad, and that rules out Justice League. So that leaves us from Batman 89 up until this movie. So I believe that is 9 films.
Yep.
And so do you want to do your ranking first? Or do you want me to do mine?
I'll do mine first.
Okay. All right.
I'll start at the bottom. So at number 9, I have Batman and Robin.
Nice.
It's do you really need to say anything? After that, maybe this is slightly maybe I should switch this. I actually have Batman vs Superman next.
No, dude, we're on the same page so far.
Okay. After that, I have Batman Forever.
Same page.
Then I have Batman Returns.
Same page.
That's number 6. 5. And this, I feel like we're going to start differing here.
Oh, I think we are.
The 89 Batman.
Yeah, we're different.
Okay. 4, I have Dark Knight Rises. 3, I have Batman Begins. 2, I have the Batman, and 1, I have Dark Knight.
Okay.
We usually do this. We usually have some part that's exactly the same, and then somewhere in the middle we use totally.
Right. Our lists are very, very, very similar. I'll go over mine, then we can kind of discuss real quick. So 9, Batman and Robin. 8, Batman v Superman. 7, Batman Forever. 6, Batman Returns. Okay, please don't hate me. Number 5, The Batman. Number 4, The Dark Knight Rises. Number 3, Batman Begins. Number 2, Batman 1989. Number 1, The Dark Knight.
So we basically just swapped 2 and 5.
Yeah, but it's a pretty crucial 2 and 5, don't you think?
It totally is. Yeah, it totally is. I think the reason I did that, the reason I put Batman 89 so low is I think it's a nostalgia thing. I think if I watched that movie today, it wouldn't be as good as I remembered it being back then. Because back then it was such a revelation. It was something so different. I had never seen anything like that before, and I was a very impressionable 89. So I was like 8 or 9.
Yeah,
I guess I was 8 because I was 81.
So yeah, you're a year older than me. I was 7. So
yeah, so I was 8 years old, and I had never seen anything like it, and it was crazy, and it was great. But I think if I watched it now, I think the movie isn't as it's not as coherent, I guess, and put together as these more recent movies. I think we're just thinking back to like the highlights, and it's a little too, rose tinted glasses and all that.
Okay, I think we're going to disagree, and my point for that is the reason why I like the Transformers the movie so much is because when I watch it, every time a scene is coming up, I'm like, oh, it's this scene. Oh, it's this scene. And that's what I did for this list, too. And I've only seen the Batman once, right? But I just kind of feel like there's not enough moments like that. And I feel like Batman 89, I could almost say that for every single scene in Batman 89. Even like little throwaway scenes where it's like, Bruce just talking to Vicky Vale or something in Wayne Manor. I still feel like it's so good. The dialogue is like kind of sharp. It's a little cheesy, but it's sharp too.
That is an excellent point.
Yeah, and in The Dark Knight, it's like every scene is like, oh, it's this scene. Oh, it's this scene. So what I wanted to say though to this, and I think that this is where there's a lot of divide with people that are into comic book movies, and everyone's into comic book movies these days. Is the idea of like, is a comic book movie good because it is the most faithful to comics? So what's your opinion on that?
No, I don't think so. I think I want to see those comic things the most because that's what I know. But at the same time, I don't want an exact replica of the comic. I want something that's slightly different, that surprises me in some way. It's funny. I saw one of those stupid like listicle things today, and it wasn't really about comic book movies, but it was about adaptations where like the original creator liked some aspect that they did in the movie better than their own work. And maybe that's sitting on me a little too much here right now. That I'm feeling that I don't want them to be the same. I want them to be slightly different, at least.
Yes,
but I want to see some kind of interpretation of the things that I know. I don't necessarily want completely original, but I want a fresh take on something that I know and love.
Very well put. Very well put. I think that you were talking before about the 89 Batman being like a revelation for us. And I think it was a revelation for everyone. And I think that the 89 Batman up until Batman and Robin, it's all about the villains and like how over the top and how amazing the villains are. Jack Nicholson's Joker, Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman, right? Jim Carrey's Riddler. And that becomes a thing with Batman in the movies where it's like the villains are so important. Whereas in the comics, the villains are absolutely important, but it's always sort of like balanced. And I think that one thing that's very accurate about this movie is that when you read a Batman comic, there's almost no Bruce Wayne, like just being Bruce Wayne kind of stuff, like at Wayne Enterprises or anything like that. There's a lot of like Bruce in the Batcave, with his cowl off. Yeah. But you almost never get the Bruce Wayne stuff, but you get it in the movies all the time, right? Because they got to have that like sort of like the everyman kind of scene where they can people that are huge comic book fans are into it. And I think that just watching all these movies, we kind of have these expectations for what a Batman movie is. And I think that this movie's different, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I really got to say that you made an excellent point about the 89 Batman about it's this scene, it's this scene. And I think you're right about this movie, but I think this movie is so well put together as a whole that it kind of elevated it for me a bit. And maybe my rankings hasty. I'm always I definitely kind of lean into what have you done for me lately, kind of, I guess.
Yes.
But it was really good to me.
Oh yes. I was about to say to you, like, think about the very end of The Dark Knight where Jim Gordon has that monologue and then they show Batman riding up and he says, "A dark night." And it just, right? Perfect. Then you think about the 89 Batman where, like, he's like, "He sent us a signal." And he, like, switches on the bat signal and then Batman's on the, oh my God, so fucking perfect. But even this movie, the very end where he's riding off with Catwoman and they kind of go separate ways and he's looking, that's really fucking good too.
Yeah.
You know? So, yeah, man. Honestly, you and I could talk about this even more if you want on Wednesday night. But I got to go get my kids right now, make them dinner.
All right.
But, dude, I really appreciate you talking about this with me. And if you guys haven't liked, subscribe, please do. Me and Brian dissect comic book adaptations all the time. We're doing Doom Patrol. And we'll be back on Wednesday night. See y'all.